Welcome back to the Take a Step podcast, where we are on a mission to equip individuals to discover and start living according to their purpose. On this episode, we've got Steven Castardi. You guys have probably heard myself and my guests mention Inside Out. Inside Out is the high school ministry at my local church that I serve on, and Steven is actually the director of the men's groups of that ministry. So he's got such an incredible story that I think a lot of people will relate to as well. We talk about how he's allowed fear to control a lot of the decisions and really a lot of his life in the past, and how he's gone from being able to navigate from making fear-based decisions to faith-based decisions, and also the importance and really the necessity of suffering in our lives in order to continue to grow. So just really great conversation. I know you guys will love it. So with that said, let's jump straight into this episode with Steven Castardi. What's going on, and welcome to the Take a Step podcast. I'm your host, Josh Johnston, founder of Take a Step. It's a community that's focused on bringing together like-minded individuals who are all purpose-driven towards taking action to maximize their God-given potential. If you find value in this podcast, please leave a rating and review on whichever platform you're listening. It really helps us to continue to grow this community and change more lives for the better. Feel free to give me a follow on social media at __take a step __, and reach out to me if you have any questions or just want to connect. With that being said, let's dive in. Steven, what is going on? Excited to finally get you on the Take a Step podcast, and looking forward to our conversation.
Honored to be here, my good friend. Saw you had our friend Boyce on a couple days ago, and I'm a little nervous to follow up after him because he's like somewhat of a legend, as you know. So.
Very true. No, but I'd love to just kind of kick it off, to open it up to you to just kind of let yourself introduce yourself however it makes sense. I love hearing people's perspective on, how they introduce themselves and the way they view themselves, because I think it paints a good picture about, where their identity lies, what their purpose is. So with that, I'll kind of turn it over to you and let you run with it however you see fit.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Steven. I identify as a son of the living God and a follower of Jesus Christ, first and foremost. I'm also married to a really cool girl. Her name's Jordan. We've been married for 14 years. She's my best friend. We love goofing off with each other. We got 2 crazy kiddos. Our son, his name is Zaya, like Isaiah without the I. He's 9 years old. Typical firstborn. Follows all the rules. Literally was crying this morning because he wanted his sister to be disciplined because she wasn't ready on time, and just not going to have that. But no, he's awesome. He plays baseball. I just signed up to be his assistant coach, so pray for me there. And then our daughter, Collins, aka Coco, is 7 years old, going on 17. She's a mess. I love her to death, but she's not a firstborn, and she likes to push the envelope, and she's definitely the epitome of like, give her an inch and she'll take 10 miles. So, been married to Jordan 14 years, 2 kiddos. And as far as how we know each other, we met, I guess, about a year and a half ago?
Just about.
So I have the privilege of working for a ministry I know that's been brought up a couple times on your podcast thus far, Inside Out, which is a high school ministry here at Woodstock City Church. I get to lead our men's groups. I've been in this role for coming up on a decade. So have had the honor and the privilege to meet a lot of really cool dudes over this last 10 years. And you're one of them. So yeah, man, glad to be here. Excited about the convo.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate you sharing. And, because that's how I know you. I know you as the leader, in just as a role model to a lot of guys, the leader in our church, strong family man, strong father. So I'd love to kind of take a step back to kick things off, because I haven't heard an in-depth version of your background and where you came from. So
Yeah.
take me back to young Steven Castardi.
Oh man. I mean, I'm gonna be 40 next month. So when you say young, are you talking childhood, Stephen? Or are you talking like
I want to hear
it's-
your path to adulthood for whether that's high school, going into college, stepping out into the real world. Because I know there's a little bit of a transition from that Steven to
yeah.
now. So I'd love to just kind of hear some details there.
Yeah. So, I opened up with, my identity is found firmly in Jesus. That definitely has not always been the case. I grew up in a household. I'm a local kid. Been in the Metro Atlanta area my entire life. But I grew up in Cobb County. I would say pretty awesome childhood. I mean, I have two great parents. They're still married. They love each other. They both are also followers of Jesus. Um, but I grew up in a household where your relationship with Jesus was very private. Like we did not go to church growing up. Any kind of structured, organized religion was just not part of my story growing up. I was joking about my son being a firstborn. I'm also a firstborn. So I would say growing up, I definitely was a rule follower for the most part. Didn't get into too much trouble, for the most part, got good grades, played the sports, all the things. So middle school and high school for me were not the wonder years, but they were also like kind of just meh, like just kind of went through the motions.
Hmm.
Went to college at Kennesaw State University. This time now I'll start kind of tying in professional. I went into college fully convinced that I was going to be the youngest chief of police that Cobb County Police Department had ever seen. Like I went in, I'm going to get in law enforcement. I'm going to make a career out of law enforcement. Um, was 100% convinced of that. Went to college, got my degree in criminal justice, did the internships, went through Mandate, which is the academy, and I was on the road for a very short amount of time in uniform and absolutely hated it. And so my
Would you, what rubbed you the wrong way about it?
man, honestly, it's a big piece of it is in the process of getting my degree and going through Mandate. I had just become a follower of Jesus,
Mm.
and so having to be the person that I had to be on patrol was somebody vastly different than who I actually was.
Yeah.
So I had to be somebody I wasn't for 10 hours a day and then expect myself to come home and turn on the switch or turn off the switch and just very quickly realize like it was exhausting. At the time I wasn't even engaged to Jordan. We were just dating. Law enforcement has at the time a 94% divorce rate. And I was like, man, I just don't want to be a part of that statistic.
Really? That's
Yeah.
surprising.
Yeah. Now again,
What causes that?
the social elements of having to, I would imagine, deal with what you're dealing with in law enforcement and then come home and have to be totally okay and available to your wife and your kids. And
Hmm.
um, I did, so when I was an intern, I did primarily ride-alongs with all these different, police officers. And my thesis or my final paper, if you will, was like on the family, law enforcement and family. And so I got to do ride-alongs with a lot of really awesome guys, but I just kind of dove in. I mean, you know me well. Like I'm kind of like, hey, let's just cut straight to the good stuff kind of guy. Like, hey man, tell me about your family life. What's your marriage look like? And I think if I interviewed 100 officers, there might have been one, and I still remember his name. One officer was not divorced or would say like his marriage was thriving and his family life was thriving. It just was not something that I experienced. And so I just kind of had to call a spade and come to terms with like, hey, this just probably isn't going to work out for me.
Hmm.
And no one was more surprised than me, because again, I had committed, over 5, 6 years preparing for this, and then to get on the road and in a few months just go like, no, this is not that I just didn't handle it the way that I thought I was going to be able to handle it. And
Okay.
so put my pride aside, quit. I also will say I had many officers approach me that I had become friends with who had been in law enforcement for a decade plus and said, "Hey man, I wish I got out 10 years ago, but I'm stuck." And
Wow.
so I was grateful that I made that decision. So I quit. I had no idea what I was going to do. This is back in 2009, 2010, when the economy was not great either. And so I didn't really know what I was going to do professionally. I'll spare you all the details, but through connections, I wound up taking a job at an apartment property, leasing apartments. Um, Totally random. Never thought
Yeah.
I would do that. But I absolutely love the industry. And over 7 years had changed companies and gotten promotions and thought, this is it. Like, I'm going to make a career out of this. I'm going to continue climbing the corporate ladder. It was a great company. Um, it provided for the most part a really healthy work-life balance. Um, but during that time is when I did what you're currently doing, which is being a small group leader with high school students. And so I started volunteering my time serving with Inside Out and was a small group leader. And I did that for 4 years. I walked through freshman through senior year with my guys. And about 2 months after they graduated from high school, I got a phone call from the director of the ministry at the time. And we had obviously become friends over the years. And he's like, "Hey, man, uh, got a question. Have you ever thought about full-time ministry?" And I remember audibly laughing, like, "No, I'll never work at a church." And he's like, "Okay, well, I just created this position and I kind of had you in mind when I created it. Would you at least think about it, talk about it, pray about it, whatever?" And I was like, "Of course." And we did. And that was 10 years ago. And I'm now still in the same role that I took 10 years
Hmm.
ago. So here we are, 10 years later, still doing what I love. Um, and we'll see what happens, man.
Yeah.
These young college guys that I get to mentor a lot and have conversations with, they have this pressure of, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And I just get to tell them my story. Like, look, I was a cop and then I was in corporate and now I'm at a church. Like, you
Yeah.
can't get more all over the spectrum than that. Um, so yeah, you think you can make God laugh, you can tell him where you're going to be in a year. Um, just because his plans and our plans very rarely line up, especially
Yeah.
when you're being intentional and following him. So
Yeah. And I think that that's such a common question that I, I don't know. I think there's just a lot of pressure put on kids as they're coming out of college and even out of high school at times that,
yeah,
like when kids go into college for the first time, oftentimes they're pressured to like figure out what their major is when they're going into college. Like when I was 18 years old, like
yep,
it would not have been like I would not have told you anywhere close to what I'm doing now. So
nope.
and I
And it
think
happens most
there's
of the
so
time.
much value in like experiencing new experiences so you can have a better understanding for what you liked about that role, what you didn't like about that role, rather than trying to pressure someone to come to the conclusion of what they want to do right now. When so much can change in a developing, guy and girl at 18 to 22 years old and thereafter into their 30s.
Yeah. How often, I mean, even when you look at college, and I don't know the exact statistics, but very rarely does somebody who's in their 30s, are they doing something that's even remotely related to the degree that they got in college,
For sure. For
right?
sure.
Like,
Yeah.
and so you're right. I think more than ever, there's a pressure on this younger generation, high school, college age students to like, hey man, you got to have it all figured out now. And that's
Mhm.
just not true. I think that's a lie that the world tells them, and then it causes anxiety and all the things because they don't know what's next, and you know, it's unnecessary. Every day's a gift, and I think it's one thing to have goals and to be ambitious and to have a plan for what you hope your future looks like.
Mhm.
Uh, but to place your hope in those plans uh, is going to backfire more often than not. Because
Yeah.
as you know, even in somebody in your season of life, you just said it, man, I'm not doing anything I thought I would be doing back when I was 18, 19 years old.
Hmm. I didn't think I would have a podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was.
Right?
uh,
Yeah. So that's something I know you and I get to hopefully continue to remind, especially young men, like, hey, you don't have to have it figured out. Be
yeah.
grateful for the day, have plans, pursue your goals and dreams, but you have to do it open-handed
Hmm.
because life is just going to throw curveball after curveball. So yeah,
Yes. So you mentioned when you were when the role came about by your buddy asking, and you kind of laughed about it, like
yeah,
never ever thought that that would be a even
no.
consideration to work in ministry in a church. But like, what were some of those deciding factors? Like, what were you struggling with back and forth as far as pros and cons? Like, what led you to kind of have that initial reaction, and then what were some of those factors that played into you ultimately making the decision to make the jump?
Yeah, I think well, it ties directly into what we were just talking about. Like, I think I had to realize how close-handed I was with what my future was going to look like. And then I had to come to a point, I'll never forget it because the other piece of this too was I had two other job opportunities the same time I was presented with this opportunity to work at the church
Mm.
in the same industry, but with previous employees and, more money and bigger, better, climb the ladder, all those types of things. And I'll never forget my dad, who I'm very close with, uh, is somebody that I seek counsel from on a pretty regular basis. I was like, hey, I'd love to meet up and actually like talk through all these potential possibilities. So we met at Waffle House, of course.
Of course.
Of course. Um, and met,
Nothing like good thought stimulated over an all-star
that's
special.
it, man. Some scattered, smothered, covered hash browns are going to give you a lot of clarity. Um, but no, we sat there and just kind of like, hey, what are the pros and cons with all these different possibilities and opportunities? And I just had to recognize, all right, Lord, I say with my mouth that you're sovereign and that I get to trust you with each step. Clearly, there's something here to why this position was even presented to me. And instead of automatically discounting it, what are the possibilities if I were to say yes to this? And so me and my dad just said, like, hey, if A, B, and C happen, I think that's enough to say, like, hey, this is what's going to require you to trust Jesus the most is you doing this.
Hmm.
And I wanted to do that. It wasn't an irresponsible decision. We looked at the pros and cons. We looked at, all the different things, but um, my dad asked me a question many years ago, and it reflected in that question. Hey, if I wasn't afraid, I would fill in the blank. Um, and he asked me that, like, hey, if you weren't afraid, like, what of these possibilities would you do? And I was like, I think I would do the church thing. And I never thought I'd say that, but I think there's a level of fear that was preventing, again, without getting into details, you go from a well-paying corporate job to a church job. There's a big financial piece to that.
For sure.
And at the time we had, just had our son who at the time was under a year old. Our daughter wasn't even born. And so, um, my dad and his wise counsel, along with asking other people, but yeah, it was very much so hey, remove fear from the equation. What do you do? And it was, I'm going to take the job at this church. And I'm glad I did. I mean, that was 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
so,
I can imagine the headspace of knowing, how you've worked your way up in the, in the apartment leasing industry, and,
yeah,
you see the track record, and what that can provide as far as a
totally.
monetary return. And, you know that in order, like, producing that track record in the ministry is much more difficult, especially starting out for the first time. And so how old were you at that time? 30?
30, yeah, 31. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
31. Yeah, 31.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I
I can
just
imagine feeling like you're supposed to be at this point where you're starting to really lay that, like
Yeah,
you want to
man.
have the foundation laid and start really stacking the bricks towards the career that you want to build. And now
And
you're
I
saying, all right, I'm
did.
going to make this jump in a, quote unquote backwards jump, financially at least from, and having to kind of reestablish myself in the ministry when you don't even know what that looks like. You've never been in that role before. So I can imagine that played a lot of
Totally
head
new.
games.
It was yeah, it was terrifying. I mean, it was, to your
Hmm.
point, I had just committed most of my 20s to making quote unquote a brand for myself in this professional sense to
Yeah.
where, I was being sought out by multiple companies at the same time. And uh the path the path forward was much clearer. I
Yeah.
knew if I did A, B, and C, the likelihood would be these things are going to take place. And by the time that I'm 40, I'll probably be in this role, making this much money with this many direct reports, and so on and so forth. And then, yeah, the Lord came in and did what he does. And it's like, hey, actually, I got different plans.
Yeah.
You're gonna trust me with it. And I chose to say, yeah, I'm going to trust you with it. And I'm glad I did.
So in hindsight, looking back on, because you probably saw the track record for where you would be right now had you stayed in that industry. How like compare what you like forecast what you forecast you would have been in
Yeah.
to where to what you're doing right now. Like what are the differences as far as um, satisfaction and fulfillment that you get now versus where you thought you would have been if you stayed in that industry?
Oh, well, so yeah, I mean, in regards to, are you asking specifically the roles that I would have been doing if
No,
I?
just the fulfillment that you get out
Oh,
of what you're doing now.
yeah.
Looking at where you would have been if you stayed in that industry, would that have brought you like would you have been fulfilled with that? Would that have been something that you like would want to be in, having looked at like where you are right now compared to where you could have been?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I get to tell people now, and then, honestly, ever since I work here, like I really don't look at what I get to do as a job. It very
Yeah.
much was a privilege. Um, it is something that knowing that what I'm getting to do in this particular role um, is very fulfilling and a very purpose-driven type role because it ties so much and so directly into your original question of my identity.
Hmm.
Our identity and our purpose are, I think, strongly, overlaid. Um, and as far as like if I would have stayed in that industry, I would have probably sure I would have been making more money. Um, I but I loved it. I mean, I really did. I felt like I was helping people. I was providing them a home, and I got to go above and beyond compared to what other people in those roles were doing to show them like, hey, I actually really care about you. It just would have been different,
Yeah.
obviously, with working in a corporate job versus doing this. But as far as like what I'm doing now versus what I probably would be doing if I would had stayed on that track, I laugh sometimes, man. I'm almost 40 years old, and in ministry, you wear a lot of different hats. So I'm doing like arts and crafts to get ready for our Sunday last week as a 40-year-old. Like I'm cutting out laminated letters for our photo op for our students. And I'm like, if you would have told me at 40 you'd be doing this, I would have laughed.
Yeah.
Um, but I love it. I love it. And I'm very content in my role. And
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that.
And I feel like just going back to the question that your dad asked you, I feel like that has a huge factor in having the contentment and the
Yeah.
fulfillment of the role. Because you mentioned you don't see what you do as a job. Well, that's because if you weren't afraid,
Yep.
that's what you would be doing. And
Totally.
I think that's a level that deters so many people from taking that one step into getting on the track record for what will
Yep.
bring them fulfillment because of the fear aspect that comes in, whether if it's fear of, fear of what financial situation would look like, fear of, you don't know if you have what it takes to be successful in that line of work or in that
Sure.
path in life, or your fear of, judgment of others, judgment of family. I think there's so much fear. So I love that he tied in the aspect of, if you weren't afraid,
Mm.
what would you be doing? So I
Yeah.
think that has a lot to do with that
And I'd
statement.
say that affects probably almost everyone, if not everyone, is how, and that's part of my story, because like even though I didn't allow fear to make that decision for me, I have allowed fear to control a large portion of my life. And in hindsight, looking back, how much I allowed fear to control so many of the decisions that I had made in my life, right?
Mm,
So uh, I think that as we grow, as we mature, I think the awareness of fear and how big of a role fear does place in our daily decisions. I
yeah.
mean, it's the what if game, and we all do it. We all do it. Um, well, and we could touch on this more later, but like that's such a big part of my story. Like, so I almost feel like we got a little bit ahead in the like, hey, Steven made this huge fear, like, trusting decision back 10 years ago professionally. Yeah, but personally, I have allowed fear to control a lot of my life.
How
And
so?
so much so to where now I have come to have such a disdain for fear because I'm so aware of it and I see how it is such a stronghold on so many people um, and just their daily decisions and what they're doing. Um, and the easiest way to see fear is you have to look at where people are trying to control their life. Because when you're afraid of something, you try to control it.
Amen.
And so if there's an area in your life that you're doing this with and you're trying to control it, there's an underlying fear involved. And oftentimes I don't think we deal with the underlying what are you afraid of? We numb it out with success or uh the next best thing, or honestly staying busy or scrolling on your phone or whatever it is. Because people don't naturally people will try to control rather than trust.
Hmm.
Like that's our default, is we try to control. Our default is what if, where I think I mentioned my kids earlier, and this is something most people who know me know this about me. I have been known to maybe cuss a little bit here and there, and that's just, but that's just part of my story. Whatever, it's irrelevant. However, my kids, they might even slip up occasionally and say something that the world might be like, hey, that's not, you shouldn't say that. Whatever. Let me parent my kids, okay?
There you go.
There is one thing that my kids are not allowed to say in my house, and they know what they're not allowed to say in my house. They are not allowed to say what if. They have to say even if. Because what if is a fear-based statement, even if is a faith-based statement. And so it could be something as small as, hey, Daddy, can I go see if Cooper's home to go play? Yeah, well, what if he's not home? No, no, no. Even if he's not home,
Mm,
you'll figure it out. Like it's going to be okay. Because even in that statement, well, what if, like right then and there, what he's saying without saying is, I'm afraid that he's not going to be home. I'm afraid that whatever, fill in the blank.
hmm.
So that's a really big part of me and my family's story. A big part of my story, you asked a minute ago, is uh, back February 5th, 2016. We thought we lost our son to a medical emergency. That sent me into a spiral of anxiety, depression, a whole bunch of stuff. It was not good. Um, but because of that moment and because of the action I took, because of what happened, I got into counseling. I started doing some soul work. some Hey, let's dig deeper. Let's stop mowing over the weeds and let's get to the roots
Yeah.
of a lot of this stuff. And it was in that season that I realized, oh my goodness, I have allowed fear to control so much of my life. Um, and because of that, I have chosen to be very, very much an advocate against that, in the sense of like, so much so that my kids are not allowed to say what if in our house, right? Like, no, we are not going to allow fear to rob us of our life. We're not going to. We naturally will get afraid. I mean, that's normal. Like, it's okay to be afraid. Uh, but to dwell in that and to succumb to the what ifs of life, um, I just don't want to do it. In hindsight, it robs so much of my life that I'm at a place now to where, of course, occasionally that those words "what if" will come out of my mouth, but the people close to my life all will say, Steven, even if, and it's like, you're right. Like, nope, it's just a constant reminder.
And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, it seems like asking the what if questions that's fear based limits you from doing things that limits you from taking risks, or limits you from doing things that are contrary to what everyone else is doing.
Sure, totally.
And I think, one of my favorite quotes. Have you heard the quote that talks about following the herd? It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite quotes. I don't even remember. I heard it on a podcast, but I don't remember the source. But it's following the herd makes us feel safe, but something stands out because of contrast. Become extraordinary by being different.
Yeah.
So like the whole concept of like allowing fear to keep you quote unquote normal. But the normal lives don't stand out. And if people want to live extraordinary lives and do something better, that doesn't come from choosing to stay on the path that everyone says is normal. And so many people are bound by the idea of normalcy.
Well, and yes, I think it's comfort. I think we naturally seek comfort. I want to be comfortable. I want to know I have this much money in the bank. I want to know that I have these plans later today. You could go a million directions with that, right? And so, because we have this natural thing in us to say, hey, I want to remain comfortable, we give fear the permission to not allow us to take risk, or to not allow us to do the thing that might be contrary to what everyone else is doing. Mm-hmm. And then you fall for the lie that, hey, well, I'm just experiencing like freedom. Like I'm free, man. It's like, no, you're not. You're in bondage. Like there's the stronghold of fear is actually creating the illusion that you are in control, and you're going to continue to do whatever it is that you're doing to seek and to maintain the level of comfort in your life. Mm. And I just think, and you and I have had some conversations, like if you're comfortable, and I'm talking in particular around, at least for me, like in following Jesus and being a follower of Jesus, if you're comfortable, there's a problem. Like, we should always be getting stretched and pulled and pruned and exposed and convicted. And that's just the ongoing process, right? So if you're following Jesus and you're comfortable, which is different than content.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. But if you're comfortable, like, you got to pay attention to that, because underneath that comfort is probably some sense of control, which means underneath that there's some kind of fear that has some kind of stronghold in an area of your life.
Yeah.
And that's not freedom at all. I mean, that's the illusion of freedom, but it's not.
Yeah. And I can talk about comfort versus uncomfortable forever, but what I think the easiest metaphor to draw to that is physical, obviously. Like, I mean, if you want to grow physically,
you got to get
doesn't come from choosing to do what's comfortable.
Yep.
And you can tie that to your mental health. You can tie that to relationships, your faith.
All of it.
It all ties together, that choosing the comfortable route. Another quote I love: comfort is a slow death. Choosing comfortable will always lead you down a dying path. And because choosing to putting yourself through uncomfortable times teaches you how to withstand adversity. And if you can the more adversity you can withstand and keep moving forward, the more you're going to continue to grow. And then that leads into the whole concept of leadership, because then you can bring others along who know how to withstand the hard times and the times that test you. So many people run from that.
Yeah, it's I I don't even know if I shared this with you, but when I'm interviewing and talking to guys who want to be a small group leader, I'll always ask them or make the statement, "Hey, I would never follow a leader who doesn't have a limp. So what's your limp?
Yep.
Like, what have you been through? What are you struggling with? What are you dealing with? What are you wrestling with?" Um, because you look at least for me, and I think you'd agree, when I look at the men who are a season ahead of me, um, that I would say, hey, I respect those guys or I admire their faith. Like, dude, they got scars. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And uh, they all boast in their weakness. They all brag about like, man, I didn't have it all together and I don't have it all together. Like, uh, my story now, I'm 30, so again, I'll be 40 next month. But so much of my story started February 5th, 2016 when we thought we lost our son.
Yeah.
And if you would have told that to the 25-year-old version of me, so like, hey, it's going to be 10 years from now when this happens, you're crazy. Like, no, like I'm here now. And it's like, in reality, it's like, no, you're not. Like, you have to experience life. You have to go through hard times. You have to go through trials. You have to suffer. That's how you grow. And we spend so much, especially in the West and America, we spend so much of our time trying to avoid that. And it winds up postponing the inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone's going to suffer. Everyone's going to go through hard times. Why is it we try so hard to avoid it? Doesn't mean we should go looking for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's foolish. But that's different than having an open-handed posture of like, hey, whatever today brings, let's go. And that's contentment to me is joy. They're almost synonymous. Like the joy, like to have joy, I think is to be content.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is, hey, I'm good if I get the job, and I'm good if I don't get the job. Hey, I'm good if I get the diagnosis or if I don't get the diagnosis. You know what I mean? Like it is a state of mind and a posture of the heart to
Yeah.
actually have and experience joy. It doesn't mean you're not going to have circumstances that impact the level of your happiness. I mean, that's life. Um, but the freedom that comes from actually living out a joy daily, a contentment daily. Again, doesn't mean that you're not ambitious, doesn't mean that you're just not trying to improve and become better in different areas of your life. That's different. But the starting point, the starting place of your faith, or of your life, man, if you could get to a place where it's like, hey, I'm good, I'm content, I'm good, uh, that's life changing. To me,
For
that's
sure.
freedom. That's
Yeah.
freedom.
And I think that the company I work for now, the 1% Club, it was founded by Tommy Newberry, and he wrote the book called The 4-8 Principle. And it's that the subtitle to it is The Secret to a Joy-Filled Life. And it's all about filtering your thinking through Philippians 4:8, which paraphrasing is finally, brothers, whatever is good, whatever is noble, whatever is just, whatever is true, if there's any moral excellence or praise, then dwell on those things.
Yep.
And his whole point throughout the book is essentially joyful living begins with joyful thinking, and
Yeah.
because your thoughts, whatever you allow your mind to dwell on and what you think about, will shape the way you act. So
Totally.
if I can convince myself and tell myself that I am good, no matter what happens, like yeah, things will be hard, but
Yep.
I'm fine. Like
Yep.
we're gonna make it through. We're like whatever hard time we're tested with. At the end of the day, I have joy because I know my first of all my identity is secure,
Yep.
and because of that, Romans 8:28, God works all things together for good according to those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. Because of that, I know I can live with joy because I can convince myself that I'm fine, and that will affect the way I act.
Yep. Yep. They're similar to what you just said, the thinking and the choosing joy and Philippians 4:8 and thinking on these things. Um, Gratitude is so powerful And I think when I look at the people who experience joy, they're very grateful people. They are very grateful for all the mundane things and the elaborate things. They're the type of people who say thank you a lot and recognize the blessings a lot and don't take anything for granted, right? When I look at people who don't experience joy, they're typically not grateful.
Yeah.
Because the opposite of joy for me is lust. And by lust, I don't mean in the physical sense. Lust is that natural thing in us that wants better, wants the newer, the comparison. Well, what about this? And hey,
Comparison's the thief of joy.
yeah, compares. Yeah. Like, hey, you just bought the newest model of this car, but now they pulled up in the next year, whatever. Like, lust is essentially discontentment. Like you're not like you're constantly craving, you're constantly wanting something else. And that might, and not even material. Yes, a lot of material things, but the praise of man, right? The acknowledgement of the things that you just did well in your job. Hey, I want to be recognized for what I just accomplished. Like that is lust. That is this like I need this in order to be okay. Where the opposite of that is joy, which is I'm good. If I get all the credit, I'm good. And if I get no credit, I'm good. If I get the new car, I'm good. If I drive my mom's Dodge Taurus for the rest of my life, I'm good. It doesn't matter, right? So gratitude, though, plays such a pivotal role, I think, in experiencing joy. And so similar to, what you just referenced in Philippians 4:8, like I can stop right now and choose to think about easily 100 things that I'm grateful for right now, just sitting in this office. But so often we choose not to focus on what we're grateful for. We choose to, well, I don't have this, or I didn't get that, or what about this? So I think that there's a direct correlation between experiencing joy and having a posture of gratitude. Brennan Manning, one of my favorite authors, he wrote Ragamuffin Gospel, which is a really well known in the Christian circles from 30 something years ago. In his follow up to Ragamuffin Gospel, he wrote a book called Ruthless Trust, and he's talking about if there are 10 people who all say that they're followers of Jesus, but in reality, only one of them really is. The way I would find out who that one really is I would set up hidden cameras and watch them for 24 hours. And the person who is most grateful would be the actual true follower of Jesus. And he obviously goes on and elaborates on all that type of stuff. But I was just like, man, that's a pretty bold statement. But then I started paying attention to it. I was like, you're right. Like the most joyous people I know in my life are the ones who say thank you the most and are most grateful for whatever. In contrast to those who I'd say, man, they don't have a lot of joy in their life. They're not living a very joyous lifestyle. They're not grateful. It doesn't mean that they don't occasionally say thank you, but their starting point, their assumption is, I need that, I want that, I'm not okay until this, versus the person's like, no, thank you for this. Lord, thank you for the breath that I just breathed. Lord, thank you for introducing me to Josh Johnson a year and a half ago, and now we're doing this podcast. Lord, thank you, whatever, right? I mean, I could, and I don't want to be a nerd, but I will for a second, but literally the part of your brain that worries is the part of your brain that practices gratitude. And so the two can't happen at the same time. It's a biological impossibility. So try to worry about something while being grateful for something. You literally can't. And so the science behind the truth of Philippians 4:8.
Yeah.
Like, hey, think about all these awesome things, because if you're doing that, you ain't worrying. You're not allowing fear to creep in because you're being grateful. A big part of my story is mental health, and that's part of my that season shortly after we thought we lost our son back in 2015. I was diagnosed with OCD, and so that is a
Okay.
big part of my story.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about the power of the mind. Talk to somebody who struggles with OCD and what our minds are capable of doing, and how outside of God, our minds are the most powerful thing in the universe. Like what our minds are capable of doing, both for harm and for good, is astounding. And so, a big part of my quote unquote recovery of getting healthy was recognizing, oh, you have this ongoing thing in your mind with OCD, and you're allowing fear and worry and control to consume so much of your life. And I had to attack it. I mean, I had to replace the lies with what was true. Um,
What were some ways that that actually played out though? Like in your day-to-day life, like what were some of the effects of how did OCD affect your day-to-day?
I think the biggest factor, I wasn't present with anyone because I was in
Mm,
my head all the time, ruminating. There's a lot of misconceptions around OCD, and people, I think, overuse that word, and
for sure.
I don't think they mean to. Like, oh, I'm OCD. I like my pens lined up straight. And like, that's not OCD. That's being anal. Um, there's a difference between being anal and having clinical OCD. Um, but because with OCD, you're in your head literally all the time. You're obsessively and compulsively thinking on what ifs, which feeds into, physical compulsions, checking behaviors, things like that. Um, so I'd be sitting with somebody, and I would be physically present, but mentally and emotionally, I was completely somewhere else. The amount of times people would say something to me and I'd be like, what? I'm sorry, what? Like, say that again. Um, it was debilitating. I mean, and it can be. Again, it's something that I haven't gotten rid of. I've gotten to a place where it's managed very much so. Um, but yeah, I would say being present. Um, I think having the mindset of what if being my default versus even if. Um, and bro, this all happened mostly in 2019, so right before COVID. I'm fully convinced if I didn't get this stuff figured out before COVID happened, I might have not made it through COVID. My OCD would have destroyed me during all the craziness of 2020 and
Mm,
21. So I'm very grateful that in the Lord's timing, don't know why, how, when, his ways are not my ways, his thoughts are not my thoughts. Um, but in his kindness, he allowed what happened to my son to happen, and then used that uh, to allow all things to work together for good.
yeah.
And
Talk
I've got,
about talk about like appreciating the discomfort and the hard times because of what they yield. That is, I mean,
Mhm.
that I can't think of a better example
Yeah,
that we've talked about than that right there.
yep,
Because of the what you know now and what you know you've gone through now and who that's
yep,
created on the other side
yep.
would have never happened had it not been for those hard times.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, people don't like hearing this, Josh. You have to suffer to grow.
Amen.
Like, and we try so hard not to. And then it's like, but it's inevitable. Like it's gonna happen. Like this world is really crappy in a lot of ways. I mean, like, and the Lord's like, hey, you will have trouble. Like not hey, if you have trouble, when you have trouble.
Jesus tells us that. I mean that's my
No,
favorite
I
verse.
love his honesty.
John 16:33. He out of the words of Jesus, he says, "I tell you these things that in me you will have peace. In this world you will experience trials and tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world." So, and
You
that's so
will,
cool
not
because
you might.
exactly because um, so many people's version of the gospel is based on follow Jesus because he's going to make your life he's just going to make your
Yeah.
life better and it's going to be sunshine and rainbows, but that's the opposite of what he tells us. Because you follow him, you will have hard times, you will go through
Yes.
hardships.
Well, and
And
the abundant life that he came to give us is for us to live our daily life right now, not after we die, but now, to be present in the kingdom of God. And the
Mm,
kingdom of God is love and joy and peace.
mm,
The opposite of that is pride and lust and fear. That's our kingdom. That's what our natural default is to be prideful and to be lustful and to allow fear to control us. That's like our natural disposition.
yeah.
But yet he says, like, hey, no, follow me and you'll experience this abundant life. Well, that abundant life he's talking about isn't having a certain car or a certain health status or anything circumstantial. It's, hey, follow me and allow my spirit to renew your mind so that you could be fully present in the kingdom of God here and now.
Mm,
And that your default would be to love others, not be prideful and be selfish. Your default would be to experience joy regardless of your circumstances instead of always being discontent and wanting whatever is next. Peace, there's nothing more valuable than peace. I get to, when I have peace, the opposite of peace is fear. And again, we've talked a lot about fear, but like when you fear, you try to control. I love that as I've followed Jesus over the years and I've stumbled and I've gone through suffering, that the level of peace I now experience versus fear is astronomically different. That doesn't mean that fear doesn't still exist in my life, but it is so minor compared to where I was, 7, 8 years ago, even. So the invitation of Jesus is, hey, follow me so that I can teach you what it actually looks like to live out in the kingdom of God in your daily life. Not like you said, hey, follow me because I want to make your life better. Because you hear I want to make your life better, and people go, cool, well, better to me is more money or a six pack or that girl or that guy or whatever. Like he's like, no, 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 no. That's circumstantial. Like I want to renew your mind and allow your heart to be healed so that
mm,
you can live in a constant state of love and joy and peace. And that's invaluable.
yeah.
I don't know anyone who would trade living a life of love, joy, and peace over something material or circumstantial. And
Yeah.
if you would say that, like that's fine, then pay attention to that.
Yeah, and that takes suffering to get to that point. Like the what you said about like you have to suffer to grow, and to be honest, that's probably my biggest driving force behind why I am such a fanatic about physical health and fitness.
Yeah.
Because the way I look at it is certain things, certain trials and tribulations, certain suffering in this world you can choose, but certain suffering will choose you.
Sure.
And if I can choose to put myself through suffering, through a hard physical challenge on a
Yeah.
consistent basis and know and train my mind to know how to push through those hard times, then when those
Yes.
hard times choose me and I don't choose them, I know how to withstand those because I've done it time and time again and I've trained my mind to do that.
And that's well said. I mean, that's I stopped working out a while ago, but I still like my cold showers. And the reason I like taking ice cold showers because they suck,
Yeah.
right? Like they're not fun.
Hmm.
But to your point, to intentionally choose these hard things, I think that's something that we all could probably do a better job at. But even you mentioned your health, I know your hope isn't in your health. Like
Hmm.
you or me are both a phone call away from getting a phone call from the doctor, right?
Yep.
Like, so you're a great example of like, hey, physical health, there's a certain level that I get to control. Like I can choose to eat a certain way, I could choose to go to the gym, but my hope isn't in my physical health
Hmm. Yeah.
because that could be taken away from me immediately, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good example, I think, of hey, be ambitious, like have goals, like strive. Those are
For
all good
sure.
things, but don't put your hope in those things. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
big difference.
Huge
So,
difference, definitely. And I think yeah, that's I'm actually speaking at a breakfast this Friday, and a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is the idea of success, and
mm,
what we choose to base our idea of success, and is it based on the destination? Is it based on attainment to the goal that we set, or is it
yep.
based on the daily actions and the process and what it takes to control the controllables? Because more often than not, you can't control the end result, but you can control the work and the intentional effort you do to get to that point.
Sure,
And
pieces of it
part
for sure.
exactly, for sure. Um, So one thing I want to kind of shift to, and it definitely can tie off of, the hard times and, what you've been going through is, you recently took a sabbatical. And I know we talked, we spoke about that the other week. But for those who don't know, first, just to preface,
Yeah.
what exactly is a sabbatical?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to describe it, especially in ministry, anyone a sabbatical is essentially a intentional break away from something, but in the ministry world, a sabbatical, that term is used mostly for pastors who need some uninterrupted time off from the daily, um, so that they can go and find rest and restore and rejuvenate.
Mm.
I think it's probably the easiest way to describe it. Sabbaticals. They could be anywhere from a couple days. Some pastors take months. Really depends on the church or organization and the individual. But yeah, so I've been in ministry for 9 years. Um, and I had gotten to a point where I was like, hey, I need to take time off. I didn't even use the word sabbatical in the beginning parts of it, but that's ultimately what I was getting at. And so, yeah, a couple weeks ago, I got to take my first, I would say, real sabbatical. Of course, I've had days here and there, and even a couple days, but I
Mm.
got the opportunity to take a week off from quote unquote work.
So what led you to realize that it was time for you to take some time away so that you can be better?
Yeah, I think the level of, let me say it this way. I think it was the first time maybe ever that I was catching myself having to convince myself to keep doing what I'm doing rather than getting to celebrate doing what I get to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a red flag for me. Like I shouldn't have to be giving myself pep talks to
Yeah.
get to continue to keep doing what I'm doing. Um, and then, the last year in particular was a above average challenging year, both professionally, mostly professionally, a little personally, but mostly professional, which is certain circumstances and situations and things that, that I had walked through with some of the guys and the ministry and, the organization that I work for. And so I think it just kind of caught up to me where I realized like, okay, I'm not burning out, but I'm definitely starting to experience, I think, some of those symptoms. And so I we were laying me and my wife laying in bed and I told her, I was like, hey, I'm just tired. Like I need to figure something out. I need to figure out a way to maybe just get alone for a little bit. And that was really the end of the conversation. I mean, I didn't elaborate really even at that point with her, but then maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, I got a text message from a friend of mine who's a pastor and said, hey, totally random and last minute, but there's this opportunity to do this thing out in Wyoming, and it's a nonprofit that puts up pastors for week-long sabbaticals. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, man, you have no idea the timing. Like, so fortunately, it worked out with the short notice, and we figured out the finances, and I was able to make it happen. So I got to go to a place called Refuge, which is out. They have a couple locations. One's in Wyoming, one's in Montana. I got to go experience the Wyoming location for a week, and it was great. It was. I knew I needed it, and then until I got out there, I didn't realize I needed it a lot more than I thought I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And we don't have to go into, all the nitty gritty of everything you did and all it entailed, but um, walking away from it, what obviously I can imagine clarity was a huge, takeaway as far as clarity on, why you're doing what you're doing, how to navigate the path that you're on even better, how to connect with God on a much deeper level. But walking back into, your routine day to day, what are some of the lessons that you take away from having that experience in just
mm,
God's country with nothing to do but connect with God and
yeah.
just and what is like if I'm ever wanting to experience God's creation, I want to go to big country, in the
Yep.
river, on the mountains, see
Yep.
like the vastness to God's creation, and being in that with an intentional purpose, I can imagine was just life changing.
Yeah. No, it was an incredible experience. I went very much so with the expectation that Jesus had something that he wanted to say to me. Just because of all the thoughts, and I was processing so many different things, both personally and professionally. And so I very much so went out like, hey, Lord, whatever it is you want to tell me, please, please, please allow me to be in a state of mind and in a place mentally, emotionally to receive whatever it is that you want to say to me. And I didn't know what that would be. I didn't know if that was direction professionally. I didn't know if that was direction personally. I didn't know what it would be. And probably, I think I shared this with you already, but 36 hours into being out there, I very clearly knew what he was saying to me. And it was, son, I have nothing that I want to say to you. I literally just want to be with you.
Mm.
And that's it. Um, and it was a very profound moment where I realized it had just been so long since I had that amount of uninterrupted, intentional, present time with Jesus. I'm very consistent in getting in the word and doing all the spiritual disciplines that I think are so pivotal in growing in your faith. But I do think that there's something to extended, uninterrupted time alone with the Lord, um, especially in the busy world that we live in. Um, so I think he orchestrated in his sovereignty just for me to have this opportunity to go out there, literally just to remind me, hey, every once in a while, I just need you to take time to just do nothing and just be a son.
Yeah.
That's and so I did. So while most of the guys out there were fly fishing and horseback riding and doing all the crazy things that this place offered, I did dabble in those things, and I definitely took advantage of some of those fun experiences. But I spent most of my time sitting down on a river by myself in a camping chair, doing nothing except just sitting there, and it was glorious and it was
Yeah.
awesome. Um, so yeah, I came back feeling much lighter mentally and emotionally. And I think what I learned from that was, hey, Steven, don't wait 9 more years to take this type of intentional time to go be with Jesus. So I definitely, while I might not be able to go to Wyoming for a week every year, I, without a shadow of a doubt, will be doing an annual sabbatical, even if it's a couple nights, going and getting a cabin, getting alone, uninterrupted, no technology. Um, so yeah, I'm thankful that he exposed that. Like, hey, the daily rhythms of being with me, that's one thing. But I need to go on vacation with you, son.
Mm-hmm. You know
And
what's
by
crazy
vacation,
is we when we get in moments like that, like when we are forced to detach from the technology of the world, the social media, and just kind of unplug and be connected with God and His creation, um, you very rarely hear someone come out of that with a bad experience. And then for
never.
some reason, we're so eager and quick to jump back into that
Yeah.
digital lifestyle.
Yeah.
And like obviously with work and, some people have to, but if it feels like so many people are so ready, like they get back in the routine and getting back into the social media and they're ready to like jump back into that when they just were raving about how amazing it felt to just be
Not
unplugged
to do
for
those
so
things.
long.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It was so freeing not to do those things. Now I'm going to go do those things.
yeah,
It's like, what?
yeah,
I, yeah, I haven't been on social media ever in like at least 8 years now. I mean, so there are things like that you even just mentioned. Like there are things that we can do in our daily rhythms to prevent the noise.
mm,
Uh, for me specifically, it was given the nature, I think, of what I do in being a pastor. is just the Lord and his kindness is like, hey, you just are going to have to be intentional moving forward. Now that I've exposed this, like, you're just going to have to go get away to go be alone with me for an extended amount of time. Um, because he will show up and he will get through to you the things he needs to get through to you when you're willing to stop everything and just go be a son or just go be a daughter. But you have to be intentional with that. You have to, it can't be wishful thinking. I mean, you gotta get it on the calendar. You got to protect that time as a sacred time. You're married, you're, about to have the baby. Like you definitely gonna need some time off.
Yeah. Coming up here, 6
Yeah,
weeks.
6 weeks. So I would recommend don't take time off too quickly after baby comes, but
Yeah.
and your wife needs it too, man. And we all do. It is. This isn't a pastor thing. I think this is a follower of Jesus thing.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we all. It's if Jesus, when you look at the life of Jesus and how intentional he was about going away just to be with his Father, who are we to say we don't need that? If he needed that, right? Like,
Yeah, very true.
and so we get to follow his example. We don't have to, we get to. But to your point earlier, I don't know if I've ever met anyone who's taken unintentional time alone to go be with their creator and come back like, honestly, it was a waste of time. I haven't met that person. I haven't. And if they exist, then cool, but I haven't met them yet. So
Love it. Well, one more question that I love to ask, just kind of wrapping up the episode is, one of my main purposes and missions behind Take a Step is really helping people discover what their purpose is, A, and then B, taking action on what that purpose is. And I know we talked a lot about how the fear can, keep people from doing that, but, ultimately, what do you think is the main reason that keeps people from taking action on creating a life that they actually desire and want to be living that brings them fulfillment?
I think there's a million things, and I think it depends on the individual. I don't know if there's I would say that, hey, this is the main thing. I think if I think most people live their lives without even recognizing what their purpose is.
Yeah.
Like people don't even pay attention to it, or people assume their purpose. And I think if people were to be honest with themselves and actually take time to think about, this is what I believe my purpose in life is, I think you're going to get a lot of different answers from a lot of people. So clearly, for me personally, like I believe my purpose is as simply put, is like my purpose is to be in a relationship with God and to know him and to make him known. That is my purpose. But everyone isn't going to say that.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to, so it's a layered question depending on the individual's response. But I think the starting point for all people needs to be for them to be honest with themselves and ask themselves, what is my purpose? And if they, in fact, can create or put into words like, hey, this is what I believe my purpose in life is. I think if a lot of people did that, it would expose how selfish they are.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's just be honest. Like, hey, if you're actually willing to sit and look at your life, where it is now, where you want to go, all the things, and this is the purpose of my life, I think it'd be helpful because I think a lot of people would have to come face to face with the reality of like, that's a really crappy purpose.
Yeah. And I think you could also look at it and say, like, some people might say one thing, but their actions are saying a completely different thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Right. And again, and I'll be honest, like, and I'm throwing myself in there. In the Christian world, it's real easy for people who are identifying as followers of Jesus. Great. You're saying that with your mouth. Now let's look at your life.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at how you're spending your time. Let's look at your hobbies. Let's look at how you're spending your finances. Let me get a sneak peek into your marriage. Let me get a sneak, you know what I mean? Like, you're saying this, but then let me look at your life.
Yeah.
And so again, it requires humility for us to be honest about what we are actually living out our life and what our purpose is. And so if you were to be honest with yourself and you come to the conclusion, hey, if I'm being honest with myself, this is what I would have to say my purpose is. Another way to ask is have people answer it for you. Like, ask people that are close to you, be like, hey, what do you think Steven's purpose is in his life? Hey, what do you think Josh's purpose is? Kind of get that unbiased, unfiltered answer, and that would help, I think, people come to recognize, oh, I may say this is my purpose, but this is the purpose I'm actually living out.
Yeah.
So I think once you figure out what that is, the things that prevent people from living out that purpose is oftentimes going to be those three big things: pride, lust, and fear, I think, are what ultimately is going to prevent people from living out their purpose.
Yeah.
A selfish motivation instead of a selfless motivation. There's a discontentment that I can't fill that void versus, no, I'm good and I'm content. And then the fear versus peace piece of it, like control. Like, if you're trying to control your outcomes and your circumstances, that's probably robbing you of your purpose. But I do think that our purpose is directly related to our value, and I think our value is directly related to our identity. And I think if all three of those things don't coexist together, and your identity is found in this, but your value is found in this, but then your purpose is found in this, you're going to be running circles around each other and wasting time, and it's just not going to go well. So for me, as a Jesus follower, I can say my identity, my value, and my purpose is in him.
Yeah.
And you can't take him away from me. My identity is not being found as a husband or a father. Like, I could lose my wife or I could lose my children, God forbid, but that's just the reality. If my identity is being a husband or being a pastor, like, those are like, those things can change. And the same thing with my purpose. Like, if my purpose is anything other than to know him who created me and for him to use me to allow others to know him, all other circumstances can be taken away from me, but not that. So
love it. Awesome. Well, dude, it's been awesome having this conversation with you. I hope you've taken this much away.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, there's just so many useful concepts from, talking about the fear, the what if versus even if, the idea of comfort, and just making those decisions very intentionally, that I think so many people, including myself, will take so much away from this conversation. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you, and I love what you're doing with this podcast. And hopefully our conversation was helpful. Even if one dude takes one thing away from it, totally worth it.
For sure. Well, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Take a Step podcast. Please leave a rating, review on whichever platform you're listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and we will talk to you in the next episode. Peace.